welcome back to Midwest Access. I'm Viv Williams here with Dr. Akingbola from the University of Minnesota. And we all need to listen to what we're talking about today because sleep is really, really important. And Dr. Akingbola is here to tell us about why sleep is important. And I'd love to start with sleep hygiene. You hear that term a lot. First of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And what is sleep hygiene? What does that mean?
So typically when we talk about sleep hygiene, what we're referring to is keeping the bed just for sleep, and so avoiding getting into bed with your screen, so no screen time in bed, no just hanging out in bed. Those are the sorts of things when we think of sleep hygiene.
Okay, well, and that's just so hard not to have your screen there, and I'm guilty of when I wake up in the middle of the night and think, oh, I shouldn't, but I'm going to grab my phone, and I look at it, and it disrupts things further, right? Why does it? What's going on? Does it wake me up more, or what's happening when something like that?
So the thought there is that for waking up, the thing that wakes us up the most is the sun, and the light in our screens. That light spectrum mimics the sun, and so that blue light that's in the screens is the light that is the most activating. And so the thought is if you're looking at your screen right before bed or right before bedtime, that blue light is more activating, so it's disrupting the natural winding down process that's preparing us for sleep.
And you mentioned no screens. Does that include TV screens too? Would you recommend not having those?
No screens includes no TVs as well.
Okay, good. So if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't have consistent good sleep, what are the health risks that you face?
So when we think about consistent sleep, the sorts of things that we're really advocating for, that we're really hoping for, our cardiovascular health can be impacted by poor sleep. Our brain health can be impacted by poor sleep. If you're somebody who likes to stay physically active, your ability to recover from physical activity can be impaired with poor sleep. So those are the sorts of things that when we say it's important to get good sleep, those are the things that we're referring to.
That it's so interesting how something as simple as sleep can really take a toll on your body. So if you or your spouse, if you might notice they're snoring or they're not getting good night's sleep, what are the first steps you should take to figure out if there's an underlying issue that you could correct to help you sleep better?
So if snoring is the concern, starting by talking to your primary care physician or your primary care provider is the first step. And they can do some screening to figure out whether or not you're at risk for sleep apnea, which is different from snoring, but snoring is a risk factor for sleep apnea. So your primary should be able to help determine whether or not that's something that should be investigated a little bit further.
And symptoms of sleep apnea, what's going on at night? What would you notice that's different than snoring?
So if someone is snoring, but they also have difficulty staying asleep, so they wake up frequently throughout the evening, if their mornings are very difficult, so when they wake up, it takes them a lot of time and effort to wake up in the morning. They don't feel well rested in the morning. If somebody has difficulty making it through their day without feeling excessively sleepy, those are the sorts of things that we look out for someone who might be at risk for sleep apnea.
Okay, and you mentioned, the heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and all these not recovering as much after activity, but also it just affects your mood. I mean, you can get crabby, right?
Yes.
And that's a quality of life thing.
And so the little bit more subtle things that we would look for if someone says their memory, their concentration, their mood, they're more anxious, can also be other signs of poor sleep as well.
Okay, I've also heard that if you're sleep deprived, it can almost like you're drunk behind the wheel because your reaction time's slower. What's going on there?
So with sleep deprivation, our alertness, our vigilance, our reaction times, all those things decrease with poor sleep or with less sleep. So if you are sleep deprived, we would expect those to be negatively impacted.
Okay, and for people watching, would you kind of give us your top few tips for getting a better night's sleep?
So I think, ironically, the number one thing I think is very important is keeping a very consistent wake-up time. And so if you keep the same wake-up time every day and you have your typical daily routine, your body will start to figure out what time it needs to start winding down. so that it can get enough sleep to wake up at that consistent wake up time. So I think the wake up time is very important. Having a bedtime routine that helps you relax and helps you slowly turn your brain off before getting into bed, I think is very important. I think oftentimes we also get into bed to keep a schedule. I think if we focus more on our cues of when we're actually getting sleepy and we try to time our bedtime around when we're actually feeling sleepy versus getting in bed to keep a schedule, I think that would also make it a little bit easier for you to get into bed and to fall asleep. So often we hear that patients get into bed, but they're not sleepy, and then it takes them hours to fall asleep, and they're really fighting to fall asleep, and that just makes it more difficult to fall asleep long term. So focusing on getting into bed when you're sleepy, I think, is also very important.
It makes sense, because if you wake up all at the same time, bedtime doesn't matter, wake up time really does. We're out of time. Thank you so much for being here and giving us some tips on sleep. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And we will be right back on Midwest Access.